everybody. Welcome back to another episode here at What's Spinnin, hosted 45 Drives. You've got myself, Brett Kelly, hosting again. And this week we are joined by a friend of ours, that NAS guy, some people know him as. He's named Robbie, and he hosts and runs a YouTube channel called NAS Compares. He's got 14 years working in different areas all over the data storage solution market, and a very successful YouTube channel called NAS Compares. I recommend you check it out. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to talk about him and we'll hear from himself who he is and what he does. But Robbie, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, cheers for having me, man. I'm genuinely looking forward to it. It's an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Well, you are our first guest from the other side of the pond, so that's fun. Yeah.
No, I mean, again, I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, I'll be honest, it's largely the same. It's a bit darker over here, but that's about the same.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we're in our dark period here in Sydney, but nothing. Where are you located, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I'm south coast of England, so around Brighton sort of way. Spent most of my life in London, but ended up moving out just like everyone else did when it got too packed in there. Again, I've never been over to Canada. I've always wanted to go, to be honest. I'm hoping to head there next year. But yeah, south coast of England, large. I mean, it used to be that all of the data in the UK was based pretty much in London, and now you've got this big old data centre sort of place up north in Leeds, and then more and more of that big old space on the south coast being used up by data storage and renewable energy. And whenever you find renewable energy, you find data centres.
Yeah.
So again, just being down there as happenstance. Now we're just drowning in data down here.
Nice. Yeah, about a year ago, I spent about a week in Slough in a data center, and
oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know. Well, we had a coworker of mine from he's from up north England a little bit, and everyone up here was saying, "Oh yeah, they're going to London." And I was like, "Oh, we're going to Slough actually," and he said the same thing. He goes, "Oh mate, I'm sorry."
No, it's not our finest work. It's not our finest work.
Anyway, we'll move on then. Like I said, thanks for joining us, and we're going to go through our segments. We're going to talk about your origin story. We're going to talk about the YouTube channel. That's always really fun. We want to talk about your experience with HomeLab and what you're doing with the HL8, and some of the questions that you provided. There's some other. We'll get into some other stuff, but let's get started first with the origin story. We like to showcase interesting people here. You're an interesting fella. Tell us a little bit of who you are and how you got into this industry. And when I say industry, I mean all things data storage, education, YouTube, and beyond.
NAS Compares, as the name painfully suggests, is just about comparing different NAS solutions. I started pretty much when it comes to within this we're going to laughingly call it a career. I started off working in e-retail and working off with solution providing, and ultimately it was the first time I ever really got my head around the idea of just how little everyone has an idea about storage. Because we all know people that understand tech. I think most people that are we're saying they know a little bit of technology. In 2025, most people are involved to a greater or lesser degree with some kind of technology. But when you start talking about data storage, not only do they glaze over, they start to step away very, very quickly. And data storage people are built different. People that are into data. And frankly, they are the nerds that the nerds picked on at school. It is a rough time. And it's all too often whether it is a school, you can go something as big as a hospital or something as small as a tiny little backyard church or anyone. The minute they have to start thinking about data, it's not like buying a new PC. They don't understand the language, the terminology, it's the mysticism of the whole thing. And it became very, very apparent to me early on in retail, speaking to people, that the language being utilized in the world of data storage, be it network storage, standard hard drives and more, just wasn't being translated. There was just too many barriers between them. If I was speaking to a photo or video editor, they wanted to talk about photos and video, minutes, length, aperture and more. But when it came to how much data they used, they wouldn't have a clue. And even this goes as much, by the way, to about a week ago, via the free advice section, someone got in contact about how much data they needed. And more often than not, we remind people that a modern iPhone and a modern Google Pixel can take photos with the highest settings around 25 to 50 megabytes.
Yeah.
So you're filling up gigabytes when you've barely taken anything. And it's just small details like that no one really understood even back then. So it became really, really apparent that at that point, around 2016, 17, we were answering the same damn questions over and over again. And because I was working in retail, they frankly were only caring about the bottom line, sales, and not the message and not the interest in it. And that's where that YouTube started. I worked on a different YouTube prior to the one I'm on with that company. And that one was heavily sales based. The whole thing was about sales. And I look back at it now and cringe ever so slightly because I understood within that model, it made sense. But ultimately, the whole time, it still kept coming back to people weren't coming to be sold to. They were coming because they needed help with something.
Exactly.
And then it would get to a point where we would speak with people time and time again to help them understand the language and finding the translators. And of that, NAS Compares was born. Because at that point, I just wanted to sort of deep dive into this and find out more about how to make this more understandable. Because even at that point, about 2018, there was, if you wanted storage websites, you could go to Storage Review. Storage Review, fantastic website. No good to the layman. I've spoken to Brian several times. It is a great website, but it is not approachable to the layman at all. If you've got a sysadmin, you've got a tech department, you're laughing, but everyone else, no good. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you had your general tech website that really could flog you a laptop. It could flog you a new computer like it was going out of business. But they couldn't explain to you the priorities of the storage. They couldn't let you understand the tipping point between storage capacity and storage performance, thermals, heat, vibration, things that most people don't think about until it goes wrong, and scalability and more. And that's where it all came from. It all started in 2018 because we wanted to build a platform for the layman, everything in chewable English, chewable language, chewable crayon language. And that's really it. And I spend most of my life, if I'm making a video about something particularly complex, I make a point and start talking to my wife or my father-in-law about it, because they're not stupid people, but they have no interest in IT. And if they don't understand something, I then change it. And that's always been the remit. It has to be understood by someone that's coming into it fresh. So to answer your question, a short version of that, it started in 2018.
That was, I love that. Sick. But besides that wonderfully comedic delivery there, which was awesome at the end, I love that. I love that sentiment. We've always felt the same here at 45 Drives. We are at kind of step up because we are trying to still sell to sysadmins typically. Home Lab, we've expanded and go a little more like you said there, but it's so true in so many layers of where, like, I don't know, the art is understanding something and then translating it and passing the knowledge down to someone who doesn't get it. Like, that is the hardest thing in everything, but man, it's so rewarding. Like that look that someone gets on their face when they're like, oh, I get what an IOP is now. And then you're just like, yes,
oh,
cool.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you must have it at 45 when you have someone come, like you may have a quote or an order, a simple customer coming through at 45, like they must come through and they don't understand a lot of the language. They've come for a quote, a large amount of storage, and everyone's gone, well, look, if you're looking for big storage, these guys, because there's that lovely tipping point you guys do with regards to your price, certain storage capacity when it really does pay dividends. And I imagine your sales guys get that come through, and they've got these slightly timid people that are saying phrases and going, I'm told I need an iSCSI, or something like that. And then it's so nice to be able to help them along. And then not only do they come out with a solution, they come out and go, I actually love this. And then they'll put something in their home, and it's so damn rewarding.
Yeah, I love that. Well said. It's exactly true. And it's the... I don't know, yeah, they say a term and then you go, well, you don't actually want to do that. You want to do RBD. You want to do this other technology. And then it's so funny that everyone who needs storage, everyone needs storage. But like you said, not everyone speaks the storage language. So it's that art of translating. It's fun. It's fun. Anyway, I'm just rehashing what you said already. So let's continue on. The YouTube channel. It started in 2018, but it wasn't your full-time career yet. You were still doing it as a side gig. How long did it take you to transition to doing it full-time, and what was that final thing where you ripped the Band-Aid off and said, all right, I'm NAS Compare. I'm that NAS guy forever now?
Well, it was a couple of things. So number one, I was being because I was so deep in the retail bit, and at that point I was already speaking to distributors, I was already speaking to a lot of larger platforms, and more than anything, it was simply a case of I didn't want to, because I'm a realist. I'm not that naive. There has to be sales, ad revenue,
Exactly.
affiliate marketing, that sort of thing. But if the sales come first, everything afterwards just always felt slightly ick, and it always afterwards. A great example would be back in 2020, and again, sorry to go on another tangent. Trust me, it's relevant. I went and bought a new TV in 2020, and when I did, I hadn't bought a new TV for about 9 years, and for about a 3.5 week period, I deep dove. I swam in the world of YouTube channels, specifically dedicated to TV, specifically dedicated to the very pixel depth information, and I loved it. I have never gone back to those channels again. I have to put my hand on my heart, because for that moment, it was the most important decision I'm going to make.
Yep.
And there were people that were coming through to our site, or the company I was working for at that point. And this was such an important decision to them. This was going to be decades of data storage for their business, for their families. It was an incredibly important decision to them. They didn't want to make the mistake. They wanted to do it once. And everything around me seemed to be, well, we've got to think sales, we've got to think numbers. And it just felt so horrible and very cold. And again, I'm a realist. I understand it has to exist. But it was at that point where I wanted it to come my full life. And that was happening at the same time as we started rolling out the free advice section. So we started integrating free support, free advice. There wasn't even pay what you want. There was a donate button, but it was, we'll try and get back to you ASAP. And it was just NAS Compares in our spare time. It was myself and a guy called Ed Zus, or Eddie the web guy. And it's just, it still is just us at NAS Compares. And the number of wonderful things that happened through that, it was just the tipping point for me to just go, do you know what, I want this to be my full-time job. It will just about make even, it will just about cover it, and I won't feel icky, and I won't feel this way, where it's having to say to someone, oh, well, that's your budget, well, this might do the job, and then hoping they're not going to call you back in 4 years and say it's not working. That horrible feeling that can happen in sales when it is just about the number, and the bottom line is important, but that was really the tipping point. It was just, I knew that there wasn't a platform out there like what NAS Compares could be, and it was never going to be that, and it was never going to exist unless I gave up my full-time job and did that, and that was the tipping point.
Nice. And that was in 2021 when you jumped in full-time?
Yeah, it was summer 2021. I'd already been trying to do both things for too long, and it was already breaking me, and I had to just make a choice at that point anyway. And I'll be honest, I chose life, I chose happiness.
Nice.
So I'm not going to say NAS Compares is easy. It frigging isn't, but it is rewarding. And barely a week goes by where there isn't an article, some new cool toy, some site, something I do, or someone I speak to, even like this very podcast, thanks again for having me on, that were the process of that. But it started first and foremost with helping users with their data, and it was the right way around.
Awesome. I love that. That's a great reason to get into it. And then it's satisfaction in life. You gotta listen, I agree with you. Nothing gets me going better than when you just you see that look in someone's eyes that you've not told them an answer or whatever, you've given them the tools to understand what people are talking about, and they're like, I'm going to be fine from here now. Thank you for teaching me that. It's a fun feeling. Which then leads me into this question. So storage is weird. It's really niche-y, but it's also everywhere. It's this weird little hybrid of stuff. So what were some of the challenges you faced when you were building that community around it? Because, some people, they just go across the smack dab, they do technology, they talk about any piece of technology, and they find, you came in with the focus on storage. How'd you overcome the challenge of just were people beating on the door to see this content right away?
Well, there's two separate bits. So number one, trying to understand the language translation in the middle. I know that sounds really highfalutin and big-headed, but it was just trying to understand, because I think I can speak for everyone that's ever worked, either completely or tangentially related to storage, that within a year or so, you learn all of the pain points with a customer that's coming to you from a certain industry, say video editing, video production, I learned DCP, Digital Cinema Package, these things that they have to hand to Cannes Film Festival and stuff like that. Now, they understood they've got to make the movie. They understood they've got to form a digital cinema package. They understood they have to deliver it, but they didn't understand what it was, how much data they needed, and more. So it became very obvious that I needed a lexicon of all of these different industries, because too often, either via the free advice or when I was working for that e-tailer, that I would be contacted and then they would ask for a solution that fit a certain mold or needed help with a certain kind of data storage issue without using any of the terminology involved in data storage. So I started attending different expos, and again, all off my own. I was very poor for a while, attending different expos, attending different events, seminars, and none of them were related to data storage. So BETT is a European one for educators. I went to several ones about media shows. I think the personal low point was going to a British motor expo that travelled around. I can't drive, can't stand cars. Probably going to lose half your audience there. But trying to attend that just to soak up where data storage went into metrics and more, that was a big part of it. Trying to understand all the different ways in which data lived within those industries to a greater or lesser extent. And luckily, a lot of these expos are free to go to, and I've got a bus pass. So it allowed me to go to a lot of them. And then I would come back, and then I would sort of write up and drill them in, and then eventually they would become videos. So, the video that week might be a video of me saying, the best data storage solutions for X, because that X would be something to do with one of those different industries. And through that, and that leads on to the second point, the free advice section. In 2019, we'd had the free advice section running at that point, I think, for about 8 or 9 months. And it was really only meant to be, we thought, for just, the odd user trying to buy something on Amazon. Maybe, a company that's got 3 to 5 members of staff and no IT person that just needs a bit of help. So we're just like, we'll do this free advice section here. And, I'll hands in the air. We did it, one, because we could learn a lot more. I'll be honest, I learned quite a lot through that then got translated into videos, but also it allowed us to learn a lot more of that glossary and index of terms. Now, we thought we'd get maybe 3 to 5 inquiries a week, and within about 2 weeks we were getting 20 a day, and it was completely unworkable because we realized just how much people wanted free advice in the world of data storage. And this wasn't just bedroom, single people. Yeah. It was businesses, lots of businesses that had spent ages where they've got a marketing team, they've got HR, they've got sales, they've got logistics. They do not have an IT guy. They have someone remotely, and they buy from PC World. And it was a real eye opener, and it was leveraging a lot of that information that was coming in while still supporting it. There was quite a difficult stage in NAS Compares development early doors. And then the pandemic happened, and which was fantastic for no one, because when the pandemic occurred, everyone needed to suddenly work remotely, and everyone needed to suddenly understand local technology and terminal in and stuff like that. And we spent a lot of time servicing locally in our own time outside of our already existing workload, because I was still working for that company at the time. So in my spare time, I was still helping. And again, it sounds like I'm virtue signaling. I'm not. It was awful.
Yeah.
I would end up helping some schools around the area who were trying to set up remote access with their pupils in the local catchment area. So a lot of NAS Compares early few years before it became my full-time life was about learning those pain points and learning the terminology. And that sometimes it was hard, but almost always it was rewarding. And that's kind of where it's at now, because I'm still trying my damnedest for it to be crayon, user-friendly, easy to chew, understand. And I'm trying to get as many people as possible into DIY NAS now. Because upwards of 5-6 years ago, it was too complicated for most people, but that isn't the case now. And because you've got a lot more turn or semi-turnkey solutions, I do think now is a great time for people to move into home DIY NAS, but also it is approachable and understandable to entry-level users. So yeah, that was a big part of the forming of it in the early hurdles. And where we are now, it's just the same thing, but on a grander scale.
That's awesome. That's good strategy. You really understand that, and I think it comes from your sales background there too, because we've found success here, and what we've had to learn too is to stop speaking storage and start speaking their language, and like translate it, right? Because anyway, so awesome. That's good, cool. Actually, when you said there, I liked your bus pass line, and you said at the time you were poor. So that leads me to my next question about your first self-built NAS. Apparently, a nice little broken laptop with a broken screen. You won in a pub, maybe? Tell us about that.
It was a pub called the Coronation Hall,
Nice.
and it was a pub quiz. The PC I had at the time was what was it? Oh yeah, garbage. And at the time, I entered this pub quiz with two of my flatmates, both called John. It sounds like a sitcom, but it wasn't. And we went to
John
this pub in Surbiton, and we ended up winning it. And again, it sounds fantastically arrogant, but they let me have the prize because I answered the most questions of
That
the
sounds
group.
fair to me.
And they handed me the laptop. And somewhere between that night, the pints, and the following day, the screen didn't work. It wasn't new. It was definitely a second-hand laptop. I would have been angry, but it was my regular, and I liked going there.
Yeah.
So I ended up, and I needed a way to interface into this laptop because not only did it have no screen, it only had like VGA out. And even at that point, I'm not saying VGA was dead, but I didn't have the VGA monitor at that point. So I needed a way to tap into it. And I didn't have some crappy TFT knocking around. And I needed something to interface with this device. And that's when I first learned about FreeNAS at the time, and its web GUI, and like general browser access there. So I was like, well, this is going to help me get into this thing. And I stupidly at the time thought I could get into it and then I could install Windows or put something on this. And of course, that's stupid. You can't put an operating. It didn't work that way, particularly on the painful Athlon processor that was inside this nightmare laptop that stank of cider. Anyway, so from there I installed it, and then I realized there's no way I can get out of this and I have to stick with this. And then it ended up being the media server of our flat. And then we started using it for targeted these crappy little Macklin cameras, and my interest grew and grew and grew from this. And I got the job at the data storage seller company a little while before that. So it was all kind of a lot of bricks coming in at the same time. And this laptop it fizzed if you got too close to it. And the fans were the sound of God. So it was very, that was my first my NAS server. It was completely inappropriate, but it was still used for almost 3 years until one day it just died. We had it. But yeah, from there, it was kind of, then I had the hunger. Because I'd already, at that point, the company I was working for, it's not that it didn't work with NAS, but it was more kind of early SAN stuff or even established SAN. And it was a lot more traditional DAS and large-scale stuff like that, So my understanding of a lot of the storage market, I think, because Terabytes WD had started, sniffing the air when it came to NAS, and they were starting to roll out their color system of drives. Great little marketing technique by then. Someone definitely had a Friday afternoon after that one. But it was just it was good happenstance. That was my first server. And then from there, I ended up working a lot more in the test section and doing extra hours and working outside of my job at this particular company, helping to build a lot of these solutions, because at that point I was absolutely hooked by it. Did I mention I was poor? So it's not like I could go out that night. So I would just go back and help build all of these things. So, I mean, again, a lot of people know the company I used to work for. If you bought a solution from them, it was probably a 1 in 5 chance that I put it together because I was so interested in it and just building them and putting them together.
Cool. Oh, that's a cool story. I like that. Well, that moves us in. We'll talk more specifically about the YouTube channel. We've already started a little bit my first question was going to be kind of like how you bridge the gap between the intimidating jargon-filled resources of storage to beginner-friendly content, which we talked about that a little bit, and so we won't rehash that question. But what I do want to talk about is you're kind of like a formula for a video, like how NAS Compares helps first-time users navigate that storage market. How do you, now that you've been making videos for this long, do you approach each video the same way? Do you, I don't know, tell us a little bit of the stuff behind the curtain, well, as much as you want to share, about how you go from an idea to that, like, as you say, kind of crayon language of here's the storage market, here's how you navigate it.
Well, I would say, I mean, I would probably 1 in every 3 videos is born of the comments. Good and bad comments, I might add. So a lot of the time, I would, if I make a video and someone go, I've made videos before where people have said, you talk too fast, other people, you talk too slow, your videos are too long, you didn't go into enough detail. There is definitely constructive criticism in there, and I am definitely a man who likes to talk. You may have noticed at this juncture, but crucially, when it comes to a lot of the video production, it is really personal interest. So a lot of it will be something that's happened in the news, or it'll be a new solution or a new update, because I think at this point I must cover about 15 different brands semi-regularly. So a lot of the time I'll leave the house in the morning, I'll say goodbye to my wife, she'll go to work over there, and then I'll walk to work voice typing into my phone and just spitballing and talking and reading, and that will eventually become an article on the website. But then from that, salient bullet points, and I won't lie, AI has helped me take a huge blurb of 30 minutes of walking by the sea and turning it into foundational bullet points of my own words, which then form the idea. So a lot of the time, because of the studio is just full of different kinds of hardware that I would just pull off to test something, I've got recordings on my laptop of videos I've never made because I was so fascinated in doing a test and it didn't work. But sometimes I think about publishing the videos of things that didn't work, but then I think, who is that helping? And it will help someone so they don't have to waste their sodding time. But a lot of the process does come down to just the comments in the morning direct me towards something. I've got quite a large, he says trying to be modest. I've got quite a large user base of people who will see something in the news and let me know, or highlight things to me, or frankly leak things to me, and then I will sort of dig into those. And then I've got quite a lot of people that I speak to over in Taiwan and China who work on these things firsthand, who are enthusiasts just like me. So via its Discord or Reddit or just straight DMs, will just be like, oh, you should see this thing we're working on, it's amazing. So I'll just be reading up on it, and I'm sure other YouTube channels have the same thing. But that enthusiasm then gets poured into something else. So a video I'm working on at the moment, I'm not even, I think about 35% into it. Steam recently announced that they are locking and rolling out their home console. They tried it once, it went wrong. And now, of course, they did Steam Deck, which, completely removed the Windows crappy layer. And then you've just got Steam OS, bang, bare metal. Now, that was such a success, they're going to be using that same OS on a desktop machine. People are going to be able to buy it in their homes. And finally, PC gamers are actually going to be able to game from their sofa in a nice way. So at the same time, there's a lot of console players that have always wanted to hop over into that field. So simultaneously, I know a lot of people that have either upgraded their NAS or have a NAS that's half doing one job. And these are obviously not enterprise, these are not mission critical systems. But I'm making a video right now on how to convert a NAS into a Steam machine for gaming.
That'll be fun.
It's more of a personal project, but it's little things like that. And that was born of the Steam box announcement, or the Steam console announcement. But when I'd heard about it a day or two before it went live, like a lot of people did, that was my interest in it. And the same goes for when Seagate or WD start exploring some of their magnetic recording techniques, when they went into HAMR, into microwave-assisted MR, or whatever, nuclear-assisted.
Nuclear.
A lot of stuff like that. I'm looking for, that's where a lot of it's born of. It's the information in the morning, and then it gets digested through. But ultimately, every video ends up being, how would a layman want to understand this? And sometimes it's a lot more complicated, because some of the subjects I'll talk about need to go a little deeper, need to go a little unavoidably technical, or unavoidably inside baseball. And that's where the Raid Room series, I did one on 45 Drives recently. So the Raid Room series ends up existing for those people up here. I have to acknowledge that they exist, but I'm still trying to facilitate. So the videos, and again, in the recent years, Jeff Gearing, a fantastic example where his content has become more relatable and more understandable over time. I think if his channel as it is now existed in 2018, I wouldn't have, because the market needed more of that then. We have it now, but we didn't have it then. But just my process is getting that information in the morning, voice typing it out into the universe, or my phone more precisely, and then translating that down. And then eventually that video becomes the production that I'm going to publish, and then I will make an article based on that. afterwards. And that article ends up getting more comments, as does the video. And then I wake up the next morning and say goodbye to my wife again.
And
the circle of
continues.
life.
Nice. So now that you say that, a question pops into my head. Is there any that you start with an idea, at any point of the way you go, never mind, this isn't going to work as a video? Or like, how quick are you able to like sniff out of like, now there's nothing good here? Or like, have you ever gone and made a video and been like, you know what, this isn't going to work out? Like, yeah.
The honest truth, loads.
Yeah.
I mean, generally, my spider sense for that is awful. I tell myself, and I'll lie to myself today was a great example, actually, fantastic timing. I will lie to myself over and over that even when something doesn't work out, I have learned something. And a lot of the time that is true. I am not going to mention actually what I did today because that might actually become a video.
Nice.
But it's, no, I don't have a very good spider sense for finding the line because I'm very much of if I've committed 3 hours to this, in for a penny, in for a pound, I'll throw another 8 hours at this and I'll cry. I'll sit on the floor and cry about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not very good at finding that line. I think at best, if I get to a point where something just simply isn't working, then I'll park it to another part of the studio because it may, and more often than not, it will become part of something else, or it may be useful. And then maybe I can economically claw some of that time back, but no. And I've got lots of half and unpublished content on the backlog because sometimes I've made something and an update has arrived, or in some cases I've made a video and I've just felt it's not a safe video to produce.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, mobile NASs, not a lot of people talk about it because the very concept of mobile NAS devices is an anathema. A lot of users will think, well, a NAS, surely I don't want to carry my data on me, I could have just bought a USB. But it's all of those people that go out and do a photo shoot in Saudi. They'll go out to Saudi Arabia, try and shoot, and now they've got to sit there and upload. Now, either they can get the plane and trust someone to upload it, and they take a local copy. I mean, we've all heard the stories of someone. I mean, you must have clients and customers that maybe they bought a Storinator or bought an HL, and they've stuck it on a plane because the download is just not quick enough, and they can't have even slight inconsistencies, even if they're bouncing from a cloud or direct relay with some high performance fiber. Well, a lot of the time when it comes to a lot of these solutions that I talk about and the way they can store the data and the way they're used, it can often mean that I will make a video and talk about how a system is hugely going to, and the mobile NAS being the greatest example, where you have a mobile NAS device where they will use it and then think it's just a backup. And they'll go, oh, my data's all backed up. And you're like, no, now you're in a car and all the data you've got is in one place. And I made this video and I was like, well, I can't, that's sending the wrong message. Someone's going to use that and think that's the only backup. And then they could potentially lose their data. And that was why I ended up scrubbing that video and making a completely different one.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I like your content, and I like your view of that too. Because if you're, like you said, if you're spotty sense, if you're too conservative and you shut down your ideas too early, well, then you end up just not taking risks or making anything interesting. So it's good to just trust yourself and try. But like even from our point of view at 45, like working in the R&D department, like making videos, but even like making products or trying new things out. It always starts the same idea, an idea from a customer or something, and sometimes it just doesn't pan out, like, or the risk isn't there or whatever. But does that mean the project dies? No, it just goes on hold and on the shelf. There's numerous times where we've tried to do something, and we're like, you know what, that's not going to work the way we want it to. And then a new idea comes up half a month later or a couple months later, and then we take pieces from the other one, and then it gets a whole new life. So I love the way that you approach that, where it's like you don't limit yourself and you don't completely write things off, and you wait for that spark to come back, and maybe it comes back to life. That's cool.
Sorry, just a quick aside. And on that subject, again, shout out to Radal, who had that tiny little B-Link ME Mini. He had that. And he made a video where he basically turned that into a 10G NAS docked solution. It was a great little follow-up video. And I keep meaning to message him, like on Discord or something. I probably did it after this video. Did he plan to do that and then make the video? Or did he plan the video and then make it? But it's lots of stuff like that. And I'm sure he will have had a not dissimilar story to lots of test and playing around. You've gone most of the way in and gone, oh, screw this! And then you run away. But sorry, carry on.
No, that was good. I'm glad you brought Radal up too. He's a friend of ours. He came to our Creator Summit 2 years ago. Yeah. Another fellow Brett. Share same name. Anyway, so I want to move on and talk about the home lab, but before they do that, I want to talk about one more question about the channel. So we talked about some of the ideas that don't make it, but are there any standout moments for you or milestones, particular videos or something that you look back as like that really defined your success, or that you just personally are really proud of that one video or that kind of one moment? Like, take us through a milestone or two that you're like, I'm proud of that one.
I mean, when it comes to videos, there's videos that I'm really, really pleased and proud. I mean, it sounds awful, but I would say one of the video series that I'm most proud of, and I'm using the word pride here, and it might not be the right word. So one of the things we talk about on the channel quite a lot is the growing crowdfunding market in the world of network attached storage. It's gone from fringe to being a not insurmountable amount of the budget. I mean, to take a name out of the air, Ugreen, back in 2024, a lot of people, they entered the NAS market and everyone was like, who cares about those guys? And then it suddenly turned out that they, I think it was 6.5 million they raised, and that was 12,500 NAS devices were sold. And that's a lot of money being removed from the ecosystem of people buying annually small 4-8 bay solutions, and alongside them there was lots of other companies sort of looking at crowdfunding there and wondering about it. So we made it a point of honor to discuss a lot of these. We even did some dedicated videos where we talked about all of these failed crowdfunding efforts towards service. It was either you had your Indiegogos that were really just quick buck, take the money and run, and then you had ones where it was just genuine failure. And putting together a nice composite list of these are the worries, these are the things to look for if this thing that you are backing is showing these signs specifically tailored to data storage solutions. These are your warnings. These are your 3 strikes and you're out. And a lot of it was born of a product that was released on crowdfunding from a company called Storaxa. I'm not sure if you heard about it.
I have not, no.
Yeah, so Storaxa was this brand who were saying they could make this wonderful 5 SATA 4 M.2 10 GBE Thunderbolt 4 solution for $600. And this was 2-3 years ago at this point. And it just wasn't possible. There was just, you couldn't even if everyone was working for no money, it just wasn't workable. And they raised a huge amount of money. And we made a few videos where we were saying, it's not possible. These are what can go wrong. We've so much so, we mentioned Tom Lawrence earlier on. He came on a video with us and we asked here's your opinion. You've just seen this information. What do you think? And he sort of assessed it and came to the same conclusions. It just wasn't possible. And then the campaign themselves called us out and said, "I know you're being so negative. This is what we get. This is awful Western media. And it was you trying to take a small platform. You're just thinking of the big companies." And we were like, no, we're going to commit to this. So we just back to that project. And then every single month made videos updating the good, the bad, everything. We didn't put ads on those videos. We just we did every monthly session, did Zooms, and just made a point of exploring it. And it's not the highest view thing we've ever done on the channel. It's not going to be the highest engaged thing we've ever done on the channel, but it's the thing I'm, if not the most proud about, then close enough. Nice. Because it was a case of, we made nothing out of this. This was a net loss, ladies and gentlemen, and it is to this day, because we still monitor this, because they took the money and ran. They scammed everyone. And a lot of people, we helped people with cashbacks, we advised them, we did so much stuff on that. And that's one of the things I point out and go, yeah, I'm super proud of that. Oh, and the free advice section, but mainly the first one.
Nice. I like that too. And I like the idea of, it's being realistic, pointing out some things out of protection for people, and then to have them say, you're being negative. And you're like, okay, fine. I'll be positive. I'll back you. And then hold them accountable. And then you get to sit there and be like, told us so. Anyway, interesting. Thank you. That was a good story. I want to move on and talk about your experience with Home Lab, 45 Drives Home Lab. So, like you said earlier, you gave a very in-depth analysis of your experience with the HL14 diving in its future, Houston UI, and I want to thank you for that. We always love people talking about our products. But what I want to talk about, since that, how's your experience been? And give us a high level, or honestly, as far into the weeds as you want to go, kind of explanation of what you're using it for and what your current kind of infrastructure setup looks like behind the scenes there.
Well, for I think the better part of 3.5 months, it became, and a lot of users already pointed this out in some of the videos that came out, I think between April and early August, it became my de facto 10 gig test bed.
Nice.
So any system that had 10 GBE, that became the system that was pinging it, be it as low as iPerth or more. So a lot of the time, that's what it was being used for. It still had, still running on Houston UI, but hopefully it will go back to being that. That's the plan for
Okay.
it to go back into that. But right now, it's being set up for a 3-way case comparison, because at the moment I've removed the internal board and setup that it arrived with, and I've upgraded it to an Intel Ultra 125H and a couple of 10 gig NICs, and it is being compared against the Silverstone CS358 and the Johns Boat N5 for thermals, for temperature, and for noise, thermals, noise, and just general surrounding thermal imaging, just to see how an airflow, how it compares with those. Because obviously the HL8 is not a cheap 8-bay case. A lot of you guys do the burn-in testing as well, but the idea is that I'm comparing that case against two alternatives in the market, with the Johns Bow being dirt cheap by comparison and the Silverstone being somewhere in the middle there, but it's quite a towering case there at the front. So that's where it's currently at, but I'm hoping that it goes back to being my 10 gig test bed, because it was just such a sweet, easy setup. It was just a case of I would turn it on, and Houston UI had already loaded in with iPerf running in the background, so it really was just a case of on and then setting up the new device that had just arrived and then tapping into it from time to time. And again, Houston UI, I sort of covered this a lot in the videos. What it improves upon in something like TrueNAS would be its customization, and the fact that you can go quite low. Ed was telling me that you can dick around on kernel level without TrueNAS rebooting and just completely forgetting all the stuff you've done with it, and just it was more graphical. And of course, you guys had that client tool. I'm not sure how far you guys are moving forward on that. I already used it for a little while. I've not come back to it since doing these case comparison videos, but it was the client tool and just little things like that weirdly, there is no client tool for TrueNAS. There's no client tool in the conventional sense for Unraid, which seems mad. And now you have something like TrueNAS right now working, they're working with HexOS, those guys there, to create a more user-friendly environment. I mean, it's got a $300 price tag, but that's a story for another day. And Unraid themselves, they're trying to make it more user-friendly. And the more Unraid tries to adapt its layout, and the more TrueNAS tries to simplify its UI, the slowly, surely you can see it looking more like Houston. Not completely in the color palette and layout there, and of course it is based on cockpit, but you can definitely see that Houston UI is a little bit more user-friendly as it is, but in terms of improvements, it still has a ways to go. And the client tool was a big step forward on that. It needs an easy mode, and I know an easy mode in the home lab environment at that scale seems completely contradictory. But I don't think it is, because even if you know what you're doing, you want nice, easy ways to save time. And I think that's the only major failing I ever found with Houston. All of the features are there. Every button is available to you. The problem is it's intimidating to the novice, and to the sysadmin, there isn't the quick enough options for me there to set it up. There's still the multi-layer stuff, and having an easy mode there, just because sometimes they understand what they're doing, they understand the system, default options, but not the ability to just go, look, just set it as default for God's sake. And sometimes it just wanted more. That's really the only criticism I could ever find for it. As a standalone OS, it does everything, and in some cases does it better than TrueNAS, and does it a damn sight more user-friendly than Unraid at points, which can be very text-rich. It's a nice little middle ground between the two. I think it just needs the client needs to be more front and center and just a bit more user-friendly. Have an easy mode, I should say.
Cool. Thank you for that succinct feedback, because you hit all the parts that we love about it. Exactly. Like, you can go around and screw with anything you want and it won't get wiped. But I thank you for that feedback. That's good. That's what we try to do with Houston. We try to blend it where there is a bit of a balancing point between making it so easy, but then giving people the abilities to do whatever they want. They are a little mutually exclusive sometimes. If you let people do whatever they want and change whatever they want, it's harder to always guarantee that everything kind of like works out of the box. But that's whatever. That's not an excuse. What I'm getting at is I love that insight back on the easy mode, because you're right. We give quick access to a lot of like sysadmin tools and stuff like that, but they're all like, you still kind of need to know what you're doing going into it. It'd be nice if there was a little more guided way to just set things up. You said it well. Go ahead.
It's less command line based than I thought it was going to be when I first used it.
Yep.
But just something as simple like when you have you could have when you have a login where you have a sysadmin login and other people, you can go, right, they can't use these features. And I know it would involve a large UX redesign of what was going to be hidden. It's a lot more work than I'm making it out to be. But it's just that thing where I know when I'm in a rut. When I did set the system up for 10G testing, it's set up, but I know if I went in there to tweak things, I'd either have to go command line in order to do it over SSH, or by navigating the options, there's definitely more layers if I want to change one thing. So it was neither chalk nor cheese.
Okay.
But no, I mean, again, that aside, it's still feature rich as all hell. But it's just that idea that sometimes you want a 3-course meal, and sometimes you just want a cheese sandwich. Sometimes you haven't got time, and it's just that thing.
I love that.
Please don't put that in the marketing blurb.
Oh, trust me, we won't. No, I really appreciate that honest feedback, and we can talk about this offline and all. But like as we build stuff, I want to hear. We like to collect people who are in this world who have good visionary, like Tom Lawrence and your stuff. So I'm gonna maybe against your will, you're being added to that list as someone who we bounce ideas off.
Okay.
Yeah. And things like that. Because, you know what? Not everyone always gives you feedback. Sometimes they only tell you the good stuff, and they don't always tell you how you can improve, too. So I really appreciate that.
Good to know.
So, moving on from that, actually, I want to say, too, you brought up TrueNAS and Unraid. We've always been great friends. Well, we've always been fans of the TrueNAS product. IX Systems is now just TrueNAS. For the longest time, before using 9, before all that, we used to ship a lot of free NAS on our system. That was kind of the beginning of 45 drives. We did a lot of that. And for some of the reasons that we made some choices to move past them, but Unraid, we're good friends with the people at Unraid. We used to work with them a bit, and now that Home Lab's back, little insider baseball on that. We're working on a little partnership deal of Home Labs and Unraid's coming out together, so that'll be fun. Going back to your HLA. Sorry? Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, I mean, again, if you'd like to cut this bit out, just real quick, I am also in conversation with someone at, and I'm pretty sure we're talking to the same person.
Probably.
Unraid, name begins with S.
Yep.
And I was chatting to him about a couple of other projects, and he went, we're getting close to working together with quite a big name that you've been dealing with recently. I can't say who it is, and I'll keep you updated about it, but it'd be great to do some stuff on that.
Okay, yeah.
Well, do you know what? You've solved something in my brain that's been bugging me for I think about a week and a half. Thank you for that. Genuinely, if nothing ever good comes to this, because to say I'm excited about it would be an understatement.
Perfect.
Anyway, you can chop.
We're not chopping that. That's good. That's good lead stuff.
I keep it in. God, screw it. Yeah,
Unless you're going to get in trouble for saying that, we're not cutting that. I like it.
Well, I'll leave it in then. Go for it.
Okay, cool. Because where I'm going with that is what we should do then is kind of remove that curtain between us and maybe have a little joint conversation about some marketing push and some things we can do there. That'd be fun. Okay, cool. So your future plans for the HL8, you want it back on the 10 gig test bench. Do you got any plans after that, or is that what it's going to do when you're done with this video?
Moment, it's one of those things that I think a lot of users, because it's going to be the permanent 10G test bench. Just because, I mean, again, sorry, I should have alluded to this more earlier on. When I mentioned about it being on the desk and a lot of users saw it, it was because it was in the background of a lot of videos while on. And for a system of that scale, well, I know it's only an 8-bay, but it's still metal all the way through, a couple of fans on the rear. The fact that we're still able to record videos within 1.2, 1.3 meters of the box, it's why I don't want a system that's going to have to power down and power up the whole time. And I want that to go back to being my 10G test bench, because I test a lot of 10 gig systems. Now, I would introduce it into my main backup flow, which is multi-tiered and multi-branded, along with a bunch of other systems I use for testing. When a new update comes out, I test it and then give feedback to a bunch of people on it. But really, I think most people would agree that regardless of how many bits of new technology you play with and how much new solutions come along, once you've got a backup system that works, you are terrified to dick around with it, even when you know what you're doing. And it's not a question, not so much a fear, but if something works and it works well, I'm not going to remove stuff out from it. And the HLA is a fantastic system, but it is a great, for me, active system. Cool. It is not for me that I do not want to use it as a passive system, because I trust it, but I want to do more with it. To have a system that can run that quiet, and spoiler alert on the other video, it does very well on the thermals, for noise level, vibration, and just general heat levels there. I want that to be an active system that I'm interacting with quite a lot of the time. Cool. Now, if I was running a rack mount, running in a big old rack around the background, certainly, and it definitely on scale, scalability being unbelievable. Some of the larger systems, I mentioned the Storinator as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, right now my future plans for it is to just be in my test regimen. Also, it's easy on the eye. Yep. It looks nice, and I don't want a nice looking box sat in a cupboard. Perfect. Frankly. So it's going to live there. It'll almost certainly make its way back onto the corner of the desk for people to point at its corner is in the edge of a video and tell me. But yeah, that's the plan.
Awesome. Oh, I'm excited. I'm happy to hear that it's got a good fit in your flow. Moving on from that, another fun segment we ended up calling War Stories, where it started from even just internally here after a day of work, like Friday, we don't quite have the pub culture as quite like the Brits do, but we definitely do like to have a couple pints.
It's for the best. Yeah. We do that. If we get drunk and we take over 3/4 of the world, I mean, that was just a bender. That's all it was.
Well, that's what I mean.
All colonialism was 3:15 on a Friday afternoon in around about 1703. It was a mistake. Yeah. It was a mistake.
Yeah. Oh, the pub nights get out of hand, right? Anyway, but where I was going with that is those war stories on the pub nights, whether you're taking over 3/4 of the world or you're just talking about how the last time you did it. And you tell those stories of where you go in to solve a problem or something where like, oh yeah, well this time I went in to fix this and it turned into this 12-hour day. From your experience working through your jobs, whether it's the YouTube channel or anything in your life, do you have any kind of those war stories? The ones where you went in with one expectation and you came out a changed man?
Okay, so I've got, do you know what? I standard loquacious me. I've got two stories. Okay. One, do you know, I'll leave the other. The second one, I will come back to that. It doesn't paint me in a great light, but one, I will include it as well. So the first one, this actually is still ongoing, so I can't even tell you how it ends, really. So around about 4 months ago, because one of the things I do is I work with distributors and resellers to provide technical advice on quotation. So that's something I do that is a paid commission thing. That's something to do with the free advice, but I work with a lot of European-based distributors. They have their tech teams. But again, much like we've already discussed, a lot of their tech teams aren't storage-focused. So having a storage-focused guy on the blower, they can carry on with there. So they were talking about an 8-site deployment. An 8-site deployment, it was around about 150 terabytes, spread across all 8 sites, one based in the US, the rest in 2 in the UK, the rest EU based, largely in Europe. And the idea was to have all of these set up for their clients. It'd be about 8 or 10 people at each location, all of it synchronized beautifully well. They wanted it to include the client software. They wanted it to be nice and smooth. It was around about just shy of 300,000, I think, pounds, including tax. And this order was getting put together, and they'd found out Synology, the brand in question, were going to roll out some new solutions. They were pretty chuffed. A few of the people in their IT side had already had Synology solutions. They were pretty chuffed about it. This quote, I think, took about 7 weeks to put together, because each of the respective heads and different sites had to agree upon it. And they were like, well, do you know what? If these new solutions are coming out, we're going to hold out for those new ones. Why are we going to get the old ones? We want new one. We want product support. It's going to be absolutely laughing. They quoted them. I think it was 28, maybe 26 TB Seagates going in all of them. This order was looking beautiful. Lots of 4s and 8 bay boxes there. And then Synology rolled out the gate and said, we are not supporting third-party hard drives on these new solutions. Yeah. So this quote went from, I think it was like 295,000 up to just over 500,000, because the drives, because obviously we know these days that when it comes to most servers now in most large scale systems make up barely 15 to 20% of the overall quote. So this quote went up extraordinarily because either they had to swap out each of the individual systems, which were software led, or they had to swap out the drives, which at that point Synology were only supporting 8 to 20 terabytes. So the customer was actually paying more per drive for a smaller capacity, and they'd already allotted for empty bays for expandability. So it actually increased the size of the systems to hit the same capacity. So this quote then took another 3.5 weeks for clearance. Now, during that time, Synology started having a meltdown internally, and you can quote me on that. So then it ended up being that Synology decided they are going to U-turn this policy. And me and about 4 other people screamed into the night, because at this point, suddenly the old quotes were fine, but the customers in question now were thinking, well, Synology are going to flip-flop on this.
Yeah,
we would like them to have these. They want the Synology quote as standard with the, because remember, none of these were large-scale rack mounts. These were all desktop solutions. If they were rack mounts, that qualification on hard drive compatibility was there. So then 2 quotes are now in the offing. And at the moment, it looks like the non-Synology quote is going to be gone with. It still hasn't been concluded now in November 2025. During that time, 3, might be 4, one of them's already open. At least half of the locations that this company have on site are now up and running. So it's been an absolute nightmare, and I keep looking at my email, waiting for this company's name to appear in the inbox and dreading it every single time. So again, I've got no conclusion on that. I wish I could wrap it up in a bow.
Oh, no, that's fine. That was a good war story. Usually a war story is a past story. I don't get a mid-war story, so that's pretty fun.
Well,
I like that.
And just as a quick side, another war story. That one's concluded now. One word, deadbolt. One morning, going out after a friend's birthday, I'm painting the English in a bad light. There was drinks involved. It's not doing well on that score, is it, Rob? It's not doing well. So the following morning,
you've left that culture in the Canadians. We carry it strong.
Sorry. You guys have done well. I've watched Shoresy. I know. Anyway, so and I wake up the following morning, not feeling absolutely clever, in time to read on bleeping computer, deadbolt. And then over the course of the next 2 weeks, not only is because deadbolt, the ransomware affected a lot of people, but QNAP, TerraMaster, and Acerstore, that was one of the most trying, difficult times to give support, because it was a combination of the brands, particularly QNAP in this case, completely fluffing everything in terms of security, but also fluffing and the management of things in the presentation and handling of the declaration and security advisory, but also when they pushed an update onto clients' hardware. So you had people that suddenly woke up to systems updating when they didn't want them to update. And it was just, and I'm not going to say the bad word, it was a cluster something, but that was such a trying time. And it was speaking to people that, even time and time again, explaining to them that a backup is all of the data in another location, not a target repository, whereupon their target repository had suddenly shut, explaining to people across these different brands. And again, there was blame on all sides, it has to be said, but most of the blame at that point had to go at QNAP Store. And I think even to this day, I do still talk about them, but I mentioned Deadbolt I used to mention them in every single video. I think now it's 1 in every 2. But again, accountability, as you said earlier on, but just generally, the turnaround on that. And I think the lessons that were learned by everyone after Deadbolt, not great. I think that was a lot of people's war story, to be honest.
Yeah. Those are good ones. Thank you. I mentioned it at the top, and then I forgot all about it, but I'd be remiss to ask. It might be a long story, it might be a short story, but I got a note here that just says, I hate seagulls. So I need to know, why do you hate seagulls?
So first and foremost, it's got out of hand. I've been sent seagulls. I don't tell people where my office is. I've been sent seagulls. And whoever sent the particular seagull with one eye, you, sir, should seek counselling. But just generally, I had a studio that, on the seafront, if you've ever lived in any seaside town, there are seagulls. But I had no control over the sound isolation.
Oh
And the problem
no.
was it's
Okay.
good. And like anyone that comes into YouTube, unless you know what you are doing when it comes to video editing, which I think a lot of us can agree I don't, but I'm tech knowledge first, video editing second, unfortunately. And one of these days I've really got to ask help from someone on that. But sound isolation was always a bit of a problem. And at certain times of the year, seagull noise was absurd. And people in the comments would just say, I'm just watching to hear seagulls interrupt this man talk. And it got to a point where I just had to refer to it in the videos. So I would just make the video and I'd be talking, and in the middle of something would kick off in the background. So in the middle of a sentence, I'd be like, and the important thing about iSCSI is you can actually trick your local client operating system there, your Windows and your Mac, in order to see this remote drive as something local. I hate seagulls. Wouldn't break eye contact and just keep talking. And it just became a thing. It just became a thing constantly.
That's
so on the channel,
awesome.
it will just end up being... So it just became a catchphrase of the channel. And now sound isolation is a lot better. And now people get really annoyed that there are no seagulls.
Where are the seagulls?
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot win. You cannot win.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad I asked. That's cool. And also awesome, I'm just rolling with it and making it part of it. You know what I mean? That's cool. All right, so we're coming up on an hour here, so we'll move to the closing segment. So again, I'll just start off the top here. Thanks again. This was a great conversation. And I have just a couple questions. First one, anyone getting into being a NAS user, anyone getting into being a YouTuber in this field, tips for beginners, advice for first-time NAS users on choosing the right solution, or on the other side, you can answer both or one or the other, someone trying to get into the YouTube game, which it's already the market's pretty full. What piece of advice, just one piece of advice for either groups?
Okay, so for those trying to get into storage and NAS, a lot of the time they're moving away from cloud. Almost all of them. Some people say I'm getting a NAS because I've got a drawer full of USB and a drive, and I need to access it. And some people are just moving from the cloud service. And in both cases, it's about scale. And a lot of the time, most people buy to their budget. They buy to what they believe their scale to be. They'll go, oh, well, I've got this much data. I need this much data storage space. And they add a little bit on. But it sounds so condescending, but to say to people, you're not thinking in scale, you're not thinking growth, you're not thinking not even just expandability, but just generally, no one has ever said, I've got too much empty space. Yeah. No one has ever thought that. No one moves into a house and goes, I've just got too many rooms. And it's just, people don't purchase storage solutions. Home labbers and DIYers always think scale. They are geniuses for it. But people that buy turnkey, anything below an 8 bay, have a tendency to never think scale. So anyone that ever buys a 4 bay, I advise them, or are thinking of buying a 4 bay, I advise an 8 bay, because those empty bays will pay dividends. You're not using any more power. The CPU is largely the same, and the PSU draws whatever the PSU draws anyway. So always scale up. Have empty bays. Have scalability in terms of ports and connections. Have an easier RAID spread. Just scale. And consider your data growth. It sounds, everyone says it, everyone thinks it who's in this field, but outside of this field, no one thinks about it. When you buy a car and you think acceleration versus speed, and you might think about comfort or boot space, but no one really thinks about head height in the car. It's just those silly little details. For anyone trying to break into YouTube, I mean, ultimately, right now, YouTube has become a space where trying to compete, and it's easy for me to say this, what am I on, like 180 subs or whatever at the moment? And I hate to say this,
I think.
Subscribers, terrifying that you knew that off the bat. I'm hoping you're reading that from something.
No, I just for me, paying attention.
But YouTube isn't about views anymore, and it's not about subs. It's about engagement stats, and it's finding specialist topics, and topics, it doesn't even have to be topics that no one cares about, but that no one talks about in the way that you talk about it. If you find a problem and you look and you can't find it, that's a niche, that's a gap. And again, I can only speak for data storage, but technology in itself, I go back to it. When I bought that TV, I didn't know there was a subculture in YouTube for tellies. I didn't know that, I mean, HDMI 2.1, and there are people going, ugh, HDMI 2.0 is so passé. But all of these micro communities, all of these mini groups, it's it's not about to take a great example that was discussed on Linus Tech Tips, arguably one of the best tech YouTube channels out there, for good or for bad. It's a behemoth now.
Yep.
But if I donate to Linus Tech Tips, if I put a comment in the comment section, if I get a reply, I don't feel I'm talking to Linus, and that's not to his detriment. It's still very entertaining and very technically versed as well. But there is a tipping point there. And creating a YouTube channel now is about that relationship.
Yep.
And when someone replies and replying back to them, but also that videos get made off the back of comments. As I say, that's where still a lot of my videos are made. And I'm trying my damnedest to maintain that relationship. Because talking about NAS, let's be honest, it's not iPhones.
Yep.
I will make a video and be chuffed to bits that in a year it gets 1,000 views. Because I know of those 1,000 views, let's be honest, 25% of them were bots. Thank you, the internet. But the other 75% are people that were searching for that, hopefully. Yep. And it answered and it wasn't there elsewhere. So it's about finding that niche. And if you've got a niche, even if people already make videos about it and it's not fitting your needs and you've got an itch, that's it.
Yep.
It's about specialist ecos, little pods platforms there. But yeah, that's my big thing for people. Data growth, if you're going to buy a NAS, and don't be terrified to go niche. Again, NAS people are in the IT community, they got bullied by nerds. They are the lowest pecking order people, but we are so sodding important.
Yep. Good. I love great advice. Thanks for that. That was very succinct too. Good summary. So we'll end with this. I'm going to ask you where you can let everyone know where they can follow you and follow your work between your YouTube channel and free advice. Where are all the ways they can ingest your content?
Well, there's obviously the YouTube channel, NAS Compares. Also, shout out to Eddie the Web Guy. Yes. He runs a sub-YouTube channel where he explores some of the more finer code-based aspects and some of the web-connected stuff. That's over on Digibyte. Then on our website, we do the blogs, the comparisons, the polls, and the free advice section on there. We've also connected with a few blogs and support platforms as well. So obviously there's the free advice section there if you want to use it. We also direct to preferred and recommended partners there as well. Again, we try our damnedest. It will be as free as anything. I mean, again, I almost missed the quaint little days when there was only 10 to 20 advice queries coming through there. So all that free advice is there, and we do support it. Generally, there's also the forum as well, ask.nas compares. So a lot of the queries that we get end up being turned into posts there as well, whereupon our response to an inquiry then becomes publicly findable. So that has assisted and helped people in finding similar answers. And then when we see trends on things and we go, right, that is something that needs to be addressed, then a video will come out about it. But yeah, that's really how people can find us. I mean, right now, NAS Compares, it's not a great name, but it's not a hard to find name. So hopefully
I think it's a great name. It's exactly what you do. Anyway, that was awesome. It was a great conversation. I love your insight on things and your philosophy on how you approach your work. I find it very relatable to the way that we look at things at 45 Drives here. So with that, I want to say thanks. I've said thanks a bunch, but again, I'm Canadian. I say thank you and I say sorry a lot. So thank you. The other thing I wanted to say is we would be honored as well, too, if you're ever looking for a guest or someone else to join on your channels or talk, like you said with Tom Lawrence. I know we're a vendor, but we also like to be agnostic and just share information as well, too. So I always love to jump on other things if possible. And I'll talk to Andrew and some people here. Maybe we can talk some more on-raid stuff off.
Awesome, because I won't lie, I've only got about 8 projects in my mind right now that you would be on.
Perfect.
Definitely, I've already got a bunch of ideas.
Okay, cool. Well, we're pretty blanketly on board with most of that stuff. So, yeah, we'll be talking. Okay.
Fantastic. Cool.
And with that, thanks for listening, everyone. That's this week's What's Spinning. Actually, that's What's Spun. No, I'm just playing. All right. Thanks, everyone. Catch you next time.